Hi everyone, welcome. We're checking in on a couple of my older systems today. So that means you look on the left shelf, and the ones we're talking about are these African nightcrawler worm bins. These systems are now 278 days of age, getting feeding 25 today. So they've been around. What we've been doing for the past month and a half or so, 47 days to be specific, is foraging in here, which means we've come in 4 or 5 times, I would say, over that time period, given them their feedings minus any new bedding, with the whole idea of them being given time to work that bedding down. So this foraging phase is really dependent on how much material they need to work down to make the vermicompost look really nice and fine. I'm still seeing the stems of leaves, so I'm expecting that this is going to continue for a little while longer. So I'm going to get them up on the bench and give them a feeding that's very similar to the same stuff they've been given 3 feedings now, watermelon and coffee. Well, hopefully they like it because they're getting more. Alright, let's get to work. Besides the fact that my supply of watermelon rinds has been kind of high lately, making it the de facto food in many of my worm bin feedings, there was also the idea that we'd be slipping a good bit of moisture in underneath this plastic by giving them watermelon. This plastic only came into play a couple feedings ago, up until which time you might remember there was a coffee filter plus 2 pieces of paper bag resting out on the surface. Kind of an unusual paper-based top covering. Usually I'll just use an entire sheet of newspaper covering the entire surface in one felt swoop, but the paper coverings were doing a pretty good job until we decided a couple feedings ago that the amount of drying that occurred already was adequate and that we didn't want to see anymore, so we bought the bubble wrap in, covered up with it, and then we kind of preserve the amount of moisture that we've been seeing in the systems by putting the plastic on, not letting it dry any further. Moisture is pretty key to seeing the worms accomplish their mission of foraging here, which is to break down little bits of residual food. This, for example, is the remains of a banana peel. But what I've been gathering here are chunks of potato, and 47 days is the time we've been foraging here, which means no new bedding, but that was that last feeding where they got bedding, where the potato went in. 47 days now, month and a half. And when you snap one of these things, it breaks, crunches basically. So I'm pulling these out now. Anytime I find them, stupid me, I was actually fragmenting them into little itsy bitsy pieces rather than pulling them out, and that's just going to complicate the task of finding them. But anywhere I see a chunk of potato at this point, I'm going to be just pulling them out. This little box right here is what we'll use to do that. But you know, as I was showing my collected pieces of potato a moment ago, the timing was pretty good because it did actually get to the point where it mentioned me wanting to collect these up if I encounter them, but then the battery ran out on my camera. And I saw it coming, I could see the battery light flashing. So I spent a few minutes allowing the battery to recharge, but not fully, so I feel like I'm racing against time here. So I don't know if I'm going to go too crazy hunting down potato chunks at this point. At this point, I just want to aerate the material in the system, giving us a chance to inspect the moisture level, which we've tuned in so nicely now by introducing the bubble wrap top covering a few check-ins ago. I really like the amount of moisture we've got in here, and I do believe that the addition of very damp foods I think is going to bring the moisture level even further up, but that's probably something we should consider to be within acceptable tolerances, if you want to think of it that way, you know. I wouldn't want to do it if it felt to me like things were overly damp. I mean, I did that in a couple instances recently. I even questioned myself why I was doing it, but here I don't want to do that. I don't want to swing the pendulum back in the direction of the systems to be starting to feel too moist again. I really want to maintain what to me feels like an optimal moisture level. Right now, I think we would still be a little overly damp if we were interested in trying to start the migration of the worms to get them to just migrate out of their vermicompost voluntarily. To make that happen successfully, I believe we would have to go back to removal of the plastic coverings, allowing the system to air out and dry slowly to the point where the material in the system is starting to dry out and become almost uncomfortable, less desirable for the worms to want to remain in. And that, in a way, would end up becoming motivation for the worms to want to, at some point, clear out and find something better. I'm definitely finding plenty of examples of my main reason for allowing the foraging to continue. I mean, I showed a banana stem earlier and other things, but it's all those leaf stems that you can see everywhere. Little tiny things. I mean, they are all whittling down and they're all soft and gonna break up in time anyway, so it's nothing to worry about. But either way, that's almost like my measuring stick, you know. Once I see that we've got very little of that remaining anymore, then that would be our clue that the material is almost harvest ready, and that will and we'll start thinking more about getting the worms to leave their vermicompost. For now, though, in foraging, it's the quality of the material that I'm using as a measuring stick. So, little worm chow combined with the coffee. Spread it out a little bit out here on the surface. And if you were with me last time, you'll remember how we did this. We just threw the watermelon chunks out here on the surface, and we're doing the same today. And I didn't really see any signs remaining of those top covering papers that were just sort of thrown into the middle over here last time. We gathered all that stuff up last time and left it out here alongside all the watermelon chunks. But just judging from the way that paper material had been breaking down already anyway on its own, it wasn't too surprising that this time we didn't find any more of it. So I guess we're gonna sort of cheat a little bit, right? Because we gave them coffee here as part of their feeding, and customarily we'll just give them the coffee filter as well, and we'll just follow suit with that custom here as a feeding zone indicator. Not that it would be so hard to figure out where we last fed. And I think by putting it there under the plastic in contact with that yummy watermelon, we're pretty much sealing its fate. I think we're going to see very little, if any, remaining feeding zone indicator next time we come back in here, whenever that may be. But I think that next time we come back in here, we'll already be at that point, probably, where we're going to have to start deciding whether or not foraging needs to continue or not, or what we're going to do. But right now, I think it is the best step to let it continue as is. But you know, after a 12-day pause since the last check-in, I think they were due for a feeding, so I think this was fair. Kind of a fun way to dial in the moisture too, to get the results you're looking for. All right, everyone, that's it for the check-in. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.